Hi again. In this next lesson, we're going to be talking about pricing mistakes that I hope you don't make with your startup or business. These are my philosophies, and a lot of them have worked really well for me over the years. Some startups wind up breaking the rules, and that's great. But if you do break the rules, make sure that you're experimenting to find out the best model. So the things that I'm going to be talking about are things that I have seen startups do, and it often leads to failure or at least a whole lot of money lost. So let's get started. The first one is not validating the revenue model early enough. So if you're doing a lean startup, it doesn't mean that you're jumping in without validating. You need to validate all your assumptions about the price and the revenue model before you get too far into the process. I've seen a number of companies who haven't figured it out yet and start building the product. And when you're building the product, you're burning cash. And if you're burning cash without a pricing model, it is disaster, because what happens typically is that you will go to market with what you think is the best thing, and then the market tells you something else. And if you're in that spot, having to redo, whether it's the product or a different customer segment, it becomes incredibly expensive. So I want to encourage you to do the upfront validation, do the customer development, get out of the building, talk with people, talk with customers, ask them what they would pay. And you're going to be validating your model a lot earlier in the process. So I really encourage you, before you invest in engineers, before you send your product to manufacturing over in China, that you're figuring out what the right price is for your product. I'll also talk later in this course about a number of techniques that you can use to validate that price. The other mistake I see companies make is that they base their pricing on their costs rather than on customer value. So customers don't really care how much it costs for you to produce that software or produce that item. So they aren't in the business of paying you for that value. What they're in the business in is solving their pain. So you need to price your product based on customer value because it solves pain. And what companies routinely do is they leave the customer return on investment calculation out of the equation. So you really need to understand what the calculations that are going on in a customer's head when you're creating your pricing model. Another mistake that I see companies use is that they use the same pricing structure as their competition. Now, you have a lot of advantages because you're a startup or a new business or a new product. You are probably able to create that product or software product or whatever it is that you're building a lot more inexpensively than your competitors. However, they have been in business a lot longer than you have, and they probably have a different cost structure than you have. It is possible for them to sell to customers a lot more cost effectively than it is for you to sell to customers. So when you're just starting out and you're needing to do customer acquisition, buying Google AdWords and whatever your acquisition model happens to be, may not be as cost effective as the incumbents. And but as a caution, it is possible for you to create a pricing structure that is different than the competition, but maybe it winds up costing the same amount in the end as the customers. But one thing to do during customer development is to understand what customers like and dislike about the competitor's pricing model. I've done this routinely, and I've uncovered pains that we didn't know existed with a customer's pricing model and are able to capitalize on that. So getting out there, talking with customers about the competitors and how they feel about the competitors and their prices will probably yield you a lot. Another mistake I see companies making all the time is they create a complicated pricing scheme. They create these grids, these immense grids of prices, and that doesn't serve anyone well. Making it complicated like this creates too much choice for the customers. And when you're creating too much choice, you're paralyzing their decision making. The other thing that it does from your internal operations standpoint is that it complicates things. So your finance department will wind up spending too much time managing the pricing list and managing customer payments. So I encourage you to really keep it simple. Oh, and one other item that makes it complicated is that when it comes time for selling, if you have a sales force trying to explain the different complicated pricing models delays that purchase decision even further. So here's an example of a complicated pricing list. This is just not picking on this company in particular, but I've seen this before where this is only about a third of the pricing list. So the other pricing list are two other charts that are equally difficult to understand. So this company went way overboard in creating all these different models and modules and pricing structures, and in the end, customers just walk away confused. Another mistake that I see companies make all the time is that when they're in beta, they're giving it away for free. And this is a fairly common practice. You, as a product development company, you want as many people as possible to try out your product and give you feedback. But the problem is that you're not finding out and validating the revenue model. And I've seen this happen a number of times where companies give it away for free, and then they turn on the pricing model, and then people stop using the product. And so you're not getting to the truth when you're giving it away for free in beta. So I encourage you to charge something. I encourage you to test the model that you think is going to sell and test that with your beta testers and get them to buy. Actually put a contract in front of them. You'll get to the truth a lot faster. Another mistake that I see companies make is that they think that a lower price is better. Now, it sometimes is, but remember that perception is a great part of your product offering. Price is a part of the product, and so you are creating perceptions about the product. So if you are going to market with a price that is 25 or 50% less than the competitor, imagine what the perception is of the buyer. So it may be that that's fine. It may be that that is a winner and that's a killer business model. But you may be creating the perception that your product is cheap. Maybe it's not fully fleshed out. Maybe you are not mature enough to have a product in the market. So just keep that in mind when you are pricing your product, that lower price is not always better. Mistake that I've also seen, and this has killed startups, is that the acquisition cost of getting a customer in the door winds up being higher than the lifetime value of that customer. So when you are pricing your product, it's essential that you are able to cover the acquisition cost over a period of time. Now, if your customer lifetime is going to be a number of years, you can amortize that cost or spread out that acquisition cost over a number of years, and that's fine. But you need to make sure that the revenue that you're getting from those customers is able to cover those acquisition costs. I do have a lesson later about understanding lifetime value, and I'll go into more detail then. But this is a pricing mistake that companies make all the time. Another one, and this is a personal favorite of mine, is surveying customers. I see companies routinely doing this and startups routinely doing this. They will send a survey to their customers with a list of prices, and they ask the company or the consumer to mark the price that they're willing to pay, or how much they're willing to pay, or the maximum amount that they're willing to pay. And that's just an amateurish move. Just don't do it. The way that you get to true buying amounts and true prices is by deep conversations with customers, by doing metrics-driven tests, by doing A/B testing, and that's what's going to tell you the truth. Not by sending a SurveyMonkey survey to a bunch of prospects and asking them to check off the maximum amount that they'll pay. So rookie move, don't do it. And on that note, that's the end of my pricing mistakes. If you have any other pricing mistakes that you've heard companies make, please get a hold of me. I'd love to hear your stories, and I can add them to this course. So thank you very much for watching.